Hello, and welcome back to the Parent Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Caudill. If you haven't joined before, welcome. I am a child psychiatrist with 18 years of experience. I am a mom of two kids who are 13 and 9. So I'm right in it with you. And this podcast is all about things that help us do a better job as parents. And it's honest, it's open, it's vulnerable, it's spiritual, it's all of those things. Today, the topic I'm going to be talking about is something that came up while I was at a weekend retreat. And this was a retreat where it was a room full of physicians. So these are educated, intelligent, hardworking, affluent people. And what struck me was how many times I got approached as the child psychiatrist in the room by people who had questions about their kids. We all want the best for our kids, and we are all feeling pretty lost about how much screen time is too much screen time, and how do we do a good job raising these kids, and how do we be at peace with the fact that with revision to the mean, most of our kids are not going to be the A+ students, top of their class, med school bound young adults that we were, right? And that's okay. That's totally okay. But anyway, it got me thinking. The topic that came up, which I think many of you will be able to relate to, is for me, for my husband, for most of the doctors in that room, the life that we led as children in the families of origin that we had was very different than the life and socioeconomic status that we are now able to give our own kids. Most of the physicians in that room, and it was a particular group, but most of the physicians were kids whose parents had immigrated to the US. So they were first-generation Americans. And of course, that puts the child in that situation in a very parentified role. Often they're functioning as translator. Often their parents are working two jobs. Often their parents had to accept a job that was lower paying, maybe lower status in order to immigrate to the US. And they're just happy to have been here and to have had the opportunities for their kids that it afforded their family. But that puts a lot of pressure on those immigrant children who now are adults raising second-generation American kids who are the children of doctors. And so naturally, those kids have a lot more privilege. And there's always this worry in your mind, like, am I raising this spoiled brat? Or how am I going to raise a kid who has the drive that's going to get them to where they need to go? These are all great questions, right? I think some of the thoughts that people have is, I worked my butt off to build this life. I had nothing. My kids, in contrast, have everything. So now I'm scared that they won't have the grit, the perseverance, the stick-to-itiveness to get the same thing in their own life. We worry also that our kids will be soft or entitled or spoiled, or that they'll crumble under pressure because they've never had to suffer, never had to work hard for anything. So if that's a fear that resonates with you, I want you to know you're not alone. But I also want you to know it is not inevitable that comfort will lead to a child not having drive, not having grit. And this was what I told the group when they passed the mic to me to talk about this topic, because I had strong feelings about it. I think while it's true that the lack of financial wealth in my family of origin, in my husband's family of origin, in many of the physicians in that room's family of origin, was a big part of the driver that propelled us to be high achievers, it also came at a cost, right? That drive for me was in large part from an unconscious and unverbalized sense I had that there was no going back. My parents' marriage ended literally a month after I went off to college. I was the glue holding them together. I wasn't going to have the opportunity to go couch surf in my parents' living room after college for a few years while I figured out what I wanted to do with my life, because I wouldn't want to do that because their relationship wasn't great. It wasn't fun to be around them. But also, I think I had a sense like, this isn't going to be the home for me anymore. It's not going to be the place I want to come back to, and it probably won't even be here as an option. I was right on both fronts. And that's not to say anything wrong with my parents. My parents were great people. They did the best job they could. They were excellent parents. But the things that drove me were fear, and primarily fear. It was like a survival instinct that just kept me going and going and pushing and pushing. And it gave me a lot of drive. Was it good to have that drive? Yes. Is it the best way to find drive? To be driven by your sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, survival instincts? I would argue definitely not, right? I think I don't want that for my kids. If I get to choose, I don't want that for my kids. I want them to find what lights them and what inspires them to be magnetically drawn to something in a way that gives them energy and purpose and drive, rather than feeling they have to succeed or their life is over. And again, as a child psychiatrist, I've seen lots of kids who have a high degree of perfectionism. I think to some extent that is a personality trait that's inbound. It may not be your fault as the parent, maybe just the randomness of genetics. But some people are very perfectionistic. You can work on this with your child. If you have a perfectionistic kid, you can help them understand that their value is not just in their outcomes, that they have a soul and a purpose and a meaning, and they don't know what it is yet, and neither do you, but they'll figure it out. But basically, that's what I want you to understand. Like, grit does not have to come from suffering and from fear. It can also come from inspiration and purpose-driven energy. So for those of us who are successful as parents, more successful than our parents were, we're able to give our kids things that we never got. I think we should feel great about that. We should feel happy about that. We should, though, talk to our kids not in a, you should know how good you have it. Do you realize at your age I had to walk uphill both ways to school in the snow? You know, those kinds of funny sayings that the grandparents used to have. Not in a way that induces guilt. We don't want to guilt trip our kids. It doesn't work. First of all, it'll just drive a wedge between you and your child and your relationship. But we do want to have conversations with them about what our life was like. And I think it's fine to be open and vulnerable, especially if you have older kids, like preteens, teenagers, and say, when I was your age, this is what I was thinking. These were the thoughts that were going through my head. And I know part of that is just being a teenager. You're wondering, what am I going to do? And what's going to happen to me when I become an adult and all these things. But I'm curious what's going through your head. It lets you be curious to hear from them what their perspective is. They might surprise you, but it'll let you know they are probably thinking about it more than you think they are. And it will also give you opportunities to have conversations about how much are you willing to support them and how much are you not willing to support them, because there's no legal obligation for you to support your child after they're 18, even if you have the funds to do so. And whether or not you choose to do that depends on how you value money and hard work. There's no right or wrong, and I'm not here to lecture you to tell you it should be one way or another. I think we can have great relationships with our kids, and two kids might need two different approaches. But I will say, I plan to let my kids learn the value of money. We've started this from a young age. Both of my kids started getting an allowance at age 8. That was $8 a week, cash. And then I encouraged them to divvy that up into save, spend, and give jars. And both of them, to their credit, after a brief period of spending every penny they got on candy or toys at Target, whatever it was, slowly began to amass quite a bit of money. And from there, we've been able to learn a lot of things. Learn through experience the wonderful feeling that comes from giving to someone else, giving to someone less fortunate than you, choosing who you want to give to, the joy that comes from saving up for something that you really, really want, and knowing that you got to buy that yourself because you saved for it. And also the joy that comes from spending just because you want to. And that way they get to contribute when there are things that they want. If it's something that I don't want to buy for them, I can say, well, I'm not going to buy that for you, but you have your own funds. If that's something you really want, of course, you can choose to save up for it, or you could use your savings to buy it now. It just gives us more experience with money from a young age. And as my son now is turning 13, we're even getting into investing with his money, which is great, with small little bits that he can do online. But I think it just gives us these opportunities to talk about money with our children in a way that my parents weren't able to do for me. And I hope that that will help them going forward. But I think it's also really important to help our kids know that they're safe no matter what, and that we're here for them no matter what. Not to say that I invite you to always come back and live in my living room for the rest of your life. That's understood in our family, and we joke about that. But we're like, my hope for you, and I hope your hope for you, is that you will become a functional adult and have your own independent life, and that you will want to still be part of my life and allow me to be part of yours. But I hope that you will feel not beholden to me and that you have to stay close. If your dreams and wishes take you far away, that's fine. I support you in whatever you want to do. Now, we also have some chores that our kids do. We don't give money for chores. The kids help out with things like packing their lunches, folding their laundry, helping doing the laundry, emptying the dishwasher, watering the plants, walking the dogs, because they're part of our family. And we have conversations about that. It's just the expectation that if I say, hey, can you help me set the table, that they're going to do that for us. It's not that I'm going to give them money for it. Similarly, we choose not to give money for grades. I'm very hands-off about grades. I don't do any kind of intervention with my kids. And I recognize that my kids are very high functioning in their executive functioning skills, so I don't have to. But if I had a child who struggled with ADHD or other things, I would need to be more involved than I am with my kids. But I think everyone should assume, until they're proven wrong, that their child can manage the workload that gets assigned to them by their teachers at their grade level. We as parents should not be expected to be asking our kids each day, have you done your homework? And making them sit down to do the homework. That's their job. And if they consistently fail to do the homework, again, that's between them and their teacher to work out why that's happening and come up with strategies on how they can fix it. My kids are at a school where they've had homework since first grade, and I've let the teachers know that I will not be involved in the homework equation from the get-go. And there's been bumps in the road for sure. But by fourth grade, my son was from the get-go more independent than my daughter. She's the second born, definitely less of the rule follower, people pleaser. But even her in third grade now, she is independently doing her homework. And my son in seventh grade, I have no idea what he's doing with his homework, but the teachers tell me he's doing a good job. So I think, again, the whole point here is to raise kids who do good things for themselves, for the family, and for others because it's part of their identity and they want to. Not because we force them to, and not because we manufacture struggle because we say struggle equals grit. Because struggle doesn't equal, well, it can equal grit, but it's not the only thing that equals grit. Grit can also come from a desire to do well and to make the world a better place. So let's just kind of summarize what I want you to know. The first point I want to make is that we should let our kids struggle. Don't manufacture challenges for them necessarily, but just let the natural struggles of homework, social conflict, sports teams, whether they made the whatever combo band or the school play, all of that is going to be whatever it's going to be. Let them have those experiences. Let them have some successes. Let them have some failures and just be with them through it to support them emotionally, with the stance that you are the consistent force in their life that loves them for who they are, not what they do, and supports them in working through however they want to handle that setback or that success. Number 2, I want you to encourage effort over outcome. So praise the process. Praise that they auditioned for the musical, even though they'd never been in one before, and even though they didn't get cast. That was really brave. And praise that they worked hard having a supporting role in the play. Even though they didn't get the lead, they still embraced the role they were given and did a great job. So we want to embrace their effort and praise their effort because we can't be the star in every role we have in our lives. And that doesn't mean that the non-starring roles aren't important. Who we are and how we show up is who we are and how we show up in all situations. And we want to teach that to our kids. The third thing is, I do think there is some value in maybe not exactly creating friction on purpose, like really hard things, but I think we can stop going out of our way to do things for our kids that they should be doing for themselves. For example, we read a book in the book club last year called How to Raise an Adult, and it's by the former dean of Stanford. And she talked about parents with their college-bound senior at the orientation night cutting the meat of their son. So like you shouldn't be cutting your child's food when they're 18 years old and able-bodied. Similarly, my daughter is 9. She can definitely put on her own shoes and socks, but she will still ask me almost on a daily basis if I will do it for her. And so I have to stop and turn it into a little joke and let her know that she needs to do that herself. So we want to encourage them to take care of their bodies. We want to encourage them to take care of their bodies, to help around the house, to do all of those things to the best of their abilities in a developmentally appropriate way. The other way we can create friction for older kids is don't pay for everything. Especially as kids start having more of a social life, the expenditures can go up very quickly. And if you are a family with means, it may be tempting to just give them access to a debit card or something, but that's not going to teach them what they need to understand about what reality is going to be for them when they become a young adult and they're responsible for earning their own spending money. I think it's responsible to tell your kids, I noticed you've been wanting to do a lot of things. These things cost money, and to come up with a budget that you're willing to give them, whether that's an allowance or a way to earn money through different things they might do for you or getting a job. Imagine that. I do think teenagers should get jobs, but let them earn, let them contribute. Don't pay for everything. And then I want you to share your real story. I think the more that we speak to our children about what life was like for us, how we learned, the things that we learned that made us successful, the character traits, the hard work that we did, the jobs we had that were not glamorous. And, we all had those. We don't want to do this as, again, not to be inducing guilt, but to help them understand we are a family of hard workers and you're part of that, right? This is where we came from, and they get to write the next chapter. And then we want to anchor them not in performance, again, not measuring themselves by the outcomes of their efforts, but in the purpose that's driving their efforts and in the certainty that as long as they stay connected to that purpose and they keep trying and they keep learning from the things that don't work, they will succeed at achieving that purpose. We also want to teach them that the best feeling in the world is giving. So whether this is personal projects, volunteer work, mentoring others, giving back, those experiences really matter and really build character. I think it's important for those of you who did resonate with the beginning of this episode where I talked about how not having a lot growing up was really something that contributed to my drive to want to be successful and to have a high-paying job. My narrative is now I am successful because I healed from that. It took me 48 years to rewire my brain and realize that I don't have to do everything myself in order to be a successful, valuable person. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to accept help. It's okay to seek help. It's okay to pay for help. That was my rewiring that I needed to do. And my hustle got me so far. My hardwired stories that were part of that early programming hindered me for many years. And it wasn't until I was able to rewire that I was able to move beyond it. So I want to be able to invite my kids to move beyond the scarcity story that I had in my programming and to also question maybe the abundance story that they have as a result of growing up as my child, to help them understand that isn't going to be their reality when they become a young adult. And so I want them to know, how are you going to live on X $1,000 a year when rent is this much? How do you think you'll do it? And actually problem solve with them and think about it and think, how can they add more value to the world? Not necessarily how can they just hustle more and get more jobs, although that is an effective way to earn more money, but also how can you bring more value so that you can earn more money too? So in closing, I want us to think about how we can raise builders, not just beneficiaries. And I want us to recognize that we're not failing our kids by giving them a higher quality of life, a higher standard of life than what we had as children. That is not for sure determining that they're going to end up spoiled brats and lazy or soft and not hardworking. But we do have to make sure that we leave the conversation open so they understand how the privilege and the money that they're enjoying came to be. And we give them the tools to build something meaningful with it. And we help them understand that grit doesn't always have to come from pressure and determination to survive. It can also come from a calm, regulated, safe, and secure nervous system that's driven by purpose, passion, practice, and presence. That's it for today. And if this resonated with any of you, I want you to know that I am available for group and one-on-one coaching. You can go to theparentdoctor.com and book a call with me if you'd like to learn more. See you in the next episode. Bye.